We're holding the laws of Deios, chapter 2, Perek Sheni. Chole aguf, illness of the body, physical illness. What are examples of that? Tomi mamar mosuk. One tastes something bitter and tastes sweet to the person. Umosuk mar, and something sweet tastes bitter. That's an indication the person has some kind of deficiency in his physicality, and therefore he tastes the sweet as bitter, bitter as sweet. He says people, they have a desire because of a certain deficiency, illness. They desire to eat things which are not even fit for human consumption. Examples, going to offer. They have because of deficiency, to eat earth. I spoke to somebody, doctor, there's some kind of deficiency. People have a desire to eat clay. Pechom, carbon. Visonium acholos hatovim. But food which has great value and good, gun apas, bread, boser, meat, hakolvi rovacholi. The degree of the one despises it and cannot tolerate it, it's based on the intensity of the illness. The more ill the person is, the more he rejects it and has no interest. And based on the illness, the more he desires something which has no relevance to him, which is not fit for human consumption. That's in the physical realm. Now, that's the Rambam as a doctor. You have people, their souls are sick. Yeah. Sickness of the soul is sick. Misavim v'ovim hadeos aros. They desire and love corrupted perspectives which are not truthful. V'sonim haderech hatov. V'sonim haderech hatova. And they despise the good perspective. U'misatzlim leches bo. And they are laid back and lazy and burdened to walk that path. V'kved aleim l'mod. It like weighs on them to a great degree. L'fi chol yom, based on the degree of illness. People are spiritually sick. I'll give you an example. You have a self-hating Jew, and you talk to the person, and you explain things to him. He just doesn't come around. And he hates religion with a passion, hates Judaism with a passion. Why? As much as you try to explain it, as Beryl Wine, Rabbi Wine used to say, don't mix up Jews with Judaism. Judaism is perfect. People are far from perfect. You can be upset with a person, but the actual perspective is truth. So why is it something that you can't tolerate? I don't want to be near it. I don't want to even consider it. Why? Why is there such a repulsiveness towards something which is truly the ultimate in spirituality? He has sickness of the soul. I'll give you an example. Speaks about physical illness. Person craves. Person, God forbid, takes drugs. And he has his fix, so to say. The moment he starts craving that foreign substance, which he has in his blood, he does things which are destructive to him. And he knows, but when he craves, he knows nothing but he needs that fix. He has to satisfy that craving. Why? Because he's overtaken by this deficiency, which was caused by what? By this foreign substance in the system. When a person sins, and you sin enough, the impurity of the sin enters into one's soul, and the soul becomes totally corrupted. Because it's off balance, it's corrupted. Everything which has to do with what its true nature is irritable. It's something which is painful. Can't deal with it. Isaiah the prophet, this is before the destruction of the first temple. He says to people of this ilk, Hi omrim l'rotov, woe to these people. They say evil is good, l'tovra, and what's good is evil. Shamayim somim choshech l'or, darkness is light, and light is darkness. V'or l'choshech. Samim mar l'mosok, these are the words of Isaiah to the members of his generation. And because of them, the temple was destroyed. They placed bitter as sweet, umosok l'mar, sweet as bitter. You know, there's an expression in English, the handwriting's on the wall. If the handwriting's on the wall, why can't you read it? These people, it's like reading hieroglyphics. They don't relate to it. They don't understand it. And by them, the whole thing's preposterous. We find in the Torah the destruction of Sodom and Amorah. The angels come and they say to Lot, who's the nephew of Avram Avinu, Abraham, the founding patriarch. And they said to Lot, we're going to destroy this community and all the surrounding communities. Who do you have in this community that has to be saved? So he was saved with his two daughters. His wife turned into a pillar of salt. And he had daughters that were married, and he went to speak to the sons-in-law that it's imminent, God's going to destroy Sodom because of the evil that exists here. Doing acts of loving kindness in Sodom was a capital crime. People were killed for this. This is how extreme they were. To see that as capital crime, the people deserve to be executed. So he explains to what's going to happen. So the Torah says, when they heard it, it was like a joke. They started to laugh at him. Are you out of your mind? Do you really believe this? You know, what side of the bed did you wake up on this morning? Did you eat something and you're totally confused? Are you approaching Alzheimer's or some other type of mental disorder? That's what they said to Lot. What happens? The moment Lot left the environment of Sodom and Amorah, everything there was a cosmic destruction immediately. If they would have said we're going out, but because they belittled, they mocked it, they deprecated it. It's not reality. You can have the handwriting on the wall, every indicator that the world is tottering. If you don't have a sense of, you don't have a healthy soul, then you don't have a healthy mind. You have a healthy soul, you have a healthy mind. You see something which is valid and true, you embrace it. If it's not, you reject it. But if your soul is sick, what do? You gravitate to things which are not to be considered because of this dysfunction which the person has in his neshama, in his soul. Valim Nemar, regarding this classification of people, it is said in prophets, Ozvim Orchos Yosher, they abandon pathways of appropriateness, of straightness. Leleches bedarche choshech, to walk pathways of what? Of darkness. Stop. The people, you could talk yourself blue in the face. You could communicate the most convincing argument. And where are you at? You know where. Just falls on that face. Not only that, you know, it's interesting. King Solomon says, you should not rebuke or admonish a deprecator. Because if you do, he will hate you. But you should admonish a wise man and he will love you. What is a deprecator? Deprecator means that as special as positive it is, they always find some flaw in it and they belittle it, they mock it, they deprecate it. A wise man, he recognizes that nobody's perfect, but we don't always recognize our vulnerability. And when you advise him how to be better and how to shore up and how to be in a more protective state, so you should be able to advance, although you're pointing out a failing in him, he will love you. Why? What's a deprecator? We find that in this week's parsha, last week we read how after the splitting of the sea, where the whole world stood in awe of the Jewish people, what happened? We were attacked by Amalek, this wandering band of people who don't believe in God, don't have a homeland, have nothing, and they attacked us. All the other nations literally shuddered because they saw what God did to the world on our behalf. How do you go and attack us? So King Solomon says in Mishlei and Proverbs, how do you deal with a deprecator? Do you enter into intellectual discussion, into intellectual dialogue? Do you reason with him? You know what King Solomon says? Let's takir. A deprecator, you have to hit him over the head. Because whatever you reason rationally, he processes it in an irrational context. So not only will he not love you for pointing out his shortcomings, he will hate you. Because a deprecator, a person who deprecates everything, he's in a position, he's already destroyed. The whole pattern, he's so overwhelmed with impurity due to his sins. And Amalek is a personification of evil. So the way they process things, anything that has to do with Kedusha, anything that has to do with God, they despise, they hate. And therefore, although the world shuddered and trembled because of what happened at the splitting of the sea, they went head first attacking us. They cannot tolerate it. That's Amalek. Pesi Yarim. But the fool, the hedonist, could get wise. Shun, as you point out to him, is unaccepted behavior. Unacceptable. And the positive on the other side, he gravitates towards it. Because he's not in principle against it. He believes something else has greater value. He could be wizened. These people over here, because they have, their souls are actually sick. They become dysfunctional. Therefore, whatever they process or approach something in the spiritual realm, immediately it's expelled. They repel it. And they see it as the enemy. The Torah is the enemy, because that is a representation which is not their existence. Now the question is, if the person has reached rock bottom, how does he start changing? How does he change his perspective? You have this corrupted perspective, twisted, perverted, and therefore everything you process, the ultimate, you see it in the negative. How does somehow you change? Change is not simple. But how do we even attempt to change? What's the process? What is the correction for those who are sick in their spirituality? They're failing in their nefesh. Person's not well in the physical sense. Who do you go to? You go to a doctor. You go to the professional, and he will tell you how to deal with what? With the ailment, with the disease. Identically, when a person is suffering and has setbacks in his spirituality, who do you consult with? Do you consult with the housekeeper, with the janitor, with the doorman? You consult with the expert. Who's the expert? The chachomim, the rabbis, the learned sages. Shehem rofei hanefoshos. The chachomim, they are the healers of the soul. The yirpu cholyom b'Deios shemalam nosam, and they will heal the person with perspectives. That through those perspectives, the person will be able to recover. Ad she'azirim derech tova. They'll teach him long enough until ultimately he'll revert back to the proper path. Person recognizes the cause of his problems. These corrupted perspectives. And you don't go to the expert, to the doctor, to be healed from them. Regarding this class of people, they recognize they should go to the rabbi, to the expert, how to deal with this. King Solomon says, Chochmas, Chochma Musar Evilim Bozu. Wisdom and Musar, what restrains a person, the skeptics have disgraced. As a skeptic. Skeptics called Evilim, from the word ulai, maybe. Rabbi, I hear what you're saying, but maybe it's not that way. Whatever the rabbi says, you have another spin on it. Maybe you spin it backwards, not right forward, backwards. Musa Evelim Bozu, the Musar. So first and foremost, you have to go for an evaluation. Who has the ability to make this evaluation? It's the Chachamim, the Torah sages. It's that simple. Today, very few people who could do this. You could be learned, but people don't have the so-called breadth and depth and the wherewithal to give a reading, to make an analysis of this kind of person. And I grew up on the Lower East Side. And on the Lower East Side, there was a building, famous building. It was called the Forwards Building. The Forward newspaper was published and printed there. It was on East Broadway. And between Jefferson Street and Rutgers Street, those were the two streets. And right next to the Forwards Building, there was a Jewish bookstore. And the one who owned that bookstore was not an observant Jew. Not only wasn't he observant, he looked like a communist. Probably was a communist. And he was so, even though he sold Jewish books, Hebrew books, he would sell Bialik, all the works, the playwrights in Yiddish, all that. And also, if you'd want a pair of tefillin, you could buy a pair of tefillin for him. So he used to say about him, I'm talking about this in the 50s, that when he would try to tefillin to fit them on the head, he'd have a dog there, and he first would try him on the dog to get the right size. And then, I'm not saying he did it, but he had such a persona of being self-hating, anti-religious, anti-Jewish. So why are you in the Jewish book business? No, it's the Yiddish, it's the this, it's the that. It's not observance. He has no relevance to observance. That's what he was. People have problems with Judaism. Self-hating Jews. Tell you a story. If you remember, there was a person many years ago, his name was Randy Rose. He was a financial genius, came a Baal Tshuva at Yad Avram many years ago, him and his wife. He worked for Michael many, many years ago, maybe 45 years ago. And he was friendly with a very wealthy family, whatever, I'm not going to mention the name. And he was friendly with the parents. These were known throughout the United States as being like one of the elite families, wealthy families. And they were the movers and the shakers, so to say, in Wall Street, in the economy. And when he became observant, this person, he would say, Baruch Hashem. That's how you doing? Baruch Hashem. He did well. He said, Baruch Hashem, I'm doing well. Thank God I'm doing well. He meets the mother of one of these people. She's no longer alive because he himself is probably in his upper 70s today. He meets the mother and she says, so Randy, how you doing? He says, Baruch Hashem. That's all he said to her. Her reaction to that Baruch Hashem was, don't try to proselytize me. What do you think you're doing? You think you're going to you're going to try to brainwash me? He had such a reaction from that comment that said, Baruch Hashem, he said in Hebrew, He said, what did I say? I said in Hebrew, thank God. That's all I said. That's all it means. I'm not trying. That doesn't represent any level of religiosity. Like say, thank God. I'm saying Hebrew, Baruch Hashem. But she couldn't tolerate it. Could you imagine? It was the way she went berserk. That kind of baby is expected from a Nazi, because they had the word short fuses to say too much. They weren't able to tolerate it. They hated it with a passion. So if you have this issue, illness of the soul, I want to change, but I can't. I know I'm wrong. I have an issue. Who do you go to? You go to the expert. The expert are the chachamim, are the wise men, the learned people. And they will advise you how to deal with these issues, how to come out of these doldrums, how to extricate yourself from this impurity, which doesn't allow you to have an appreciation for it. And hopefully then you'll be in a better place. You'll be in a more secure place regarding Judaism. Shem Rofi and the Foshos, they're the healers of the soul. V'yirapu chol yom b'Deios. Shemlamin osom achi achziro d'October. They keep teaching these proper perspectives. You know, like there's a famous Gemara, the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva originally was a shepherd, and he only changed when he was 40 years old. He turned over a new leaf and ultimately became the leading Torah sage of the Jewish people. Within 24 years, he had 24,000 students who were the leading Torah sages of the generation. But what spurred him on? He was a shepherd. His employer's name was Kalba Savua. He was one of the richest Jews among the Jewish people at that time. And he was out in the field watching the flock, and he notices water dripping on a stone. And over the years, the water wore the stone thin. That was his observation. And he drew what we call a kal v'chomer from the stone. The stone itself is hard, and water is soft. And the water is able to penetrate the stone to the point that it wears the stone thin. He says, my heart is no harder than that stone. And the Torah itself is compared to water. So just as that water was able to penetrate the stone and wear it thin, there's no question the Torah is able to penetrate my heart and give me a sense of positiveness towards God and towards religion. This was his first takeaway from what? From seeing the water dripping on the stone. And he became a full Baal Tshuva because of this observation. Returned fully, even to the point he asked permission from his wife to spend 13 years away from home. They teach you the Rofi HaNefesh, the healers of the soul. They're the Chachamim. They're the Torah sages. You know, it's very interesting. Hillel was the prince of Israel. And the Talmud tells us there were 3 non-Jews who wanted to convert to Judaism, each on his own condition. They first approached Shammai. They'll only convert on this condition, that condition. He says, do me a favor, I have no time to waste. And he dismissed them. Hillel had endless patience, and as a result of his interaction, all 3 of them converted. That's what happened. One of them said to him that, you know what I'd like to do with my free time? To review many things that I learned, so on and so forth. I'd like to start learning about Judaism. So he says, not a problem. I'll give you the first lesson. First lesson is the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. Hey. He says, repeat after me. So the non-Jew says, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. First 5 letters of the alphabet. He says, go home, do your homework, come back tomorrow for the next lesson. Comes back the next day, and Hill says, we're going to review it now. So let me say it. Hey, Dalet, Gimel, Beis, Aleph. He said it backwards. He said to him, what you're saying seems not to be credible. Because yesterday you taught me Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Now you teach me the order is Hey, Dalet, Gimel, Beis, Aleph. It's backwards. He says, it's good. Your question is based on a very good point. Because what is Torah? Torah is Masorah. It's the tradition. It's what's been passed down after many generations. That's what it's about. So I once said, if we played this game on someone, and when he explained it to him, he had full trust, that's the way you go. Everything is trust in a teacher. If you trust the teacher that he's interested in you, not in himself, the teacher has a chance getting through to that student. But if the teacher's interested in himself and the student is only happens to be somebody to speak to, it's not going to work. Okay, we'll stop here in this class.